Imagine this. You're boarding a plane after a grueling tour of duty, dreaming of seeing your family. But for the workers on a flight from the Unity oilfield in South Sudan, this journey home would be a one-way ticket. At the controls were aviation legends, Captain Peter Amua and First Officer Emmanuel Drake. Their combined experience seemed like an absolute guarantee of a safe flight to Juba. But this routine flight would turn into an uncontrollable dive in just 3 minutes. 20 dead, and only one inexplicable survivor found among the twisted aluminum. How could an invisible enemy hide for years beneath the skin of the aircraft, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Metal remembers every landing. Every impact from the landing gear leaves an invisible mark. This is a Beechcraft 1900D turboprop, which rolled off the assembly line in 2002. The aircraft was given the serial number UE429 and immediately went to work conquering regional routes. This model stands out with its distinctively tall fuselage and pressurized cabin. Passengers can walk around upright inside, enjoying a comfortable flight. But maintenance engineers see this beautiful airliner in a different light. These specialists are well aware of a hidden design feature. The aircraft's wings are vulnerable to metal fatigue. The critical zones are hidden deep beneath the skin, the lower caps of the rear spar, and the main attachment points, which take on immense stress. Aviation regulators fully understand the risks and issue strict directives. Technicians are required to regularly perform complex equipment checks on these parts. Special equipment scans the metal time and time again, searching for microscopic defects. Aircraft UE429 began its career in New Zealand. From 2002 to 2016, the plane operated on an incredibly demanding schedule. It flew extremely frequent short-haul routes. Takeoff, a short flight, landing, and then takeoff again. The pilots completed numerous cycles in a single shift. Each climb to altitude initiated the pressurization process, literally inflating the fuselage from the inside. Every touchdown on the runway sent a harsh shock from the landing gear straight into the wing structure. These endless cycles of pressure changes and landings created constant, exhausting stress on the spars. The airliner's new life began where the perfect asphalt ends. In 2016, its prosperous career in New Zealand came to a permanent end. The aircraft was decommissioned and crossed oceans to find a new home on the African continent. The Ugandan airline Eagle Air bought the plane, giving it a new registration number, 5XRHB. Just a year later, in 2017, the aircraft was transferred to Light Air Services. Now, its office was the harsh skies of South Sudan. A local journalist who often flew these routes described the scene eloquently. Instead of cozy terminals, you see red dust blanketing the horizon. Smooth concrete runways with clear markings are replaced by poorly prepared dirt airstrips. The outside temperature regularly hits extreme highs, heating the aircraft's skin until it's impossible to touch. The air is constantly saturated with a thick, corrosive haze. Sand inevitably seeps into every crevice, settling on the machinery. Imagine you're speeding in a sleek car down a dry riverbed. Every bump is a jarring impact. That's exactly what this aircraft was going through, every single day. The captain stares intently into a sandstorm, trying to land the plane smoothly on the uneven ground. A powerful shudder runs through the entire fuselage, from nose to tail. And this is where the main threat lies. That very same harsh vibration from the rocky, unpaved runways acts like a clockwork mechanism. The continuous tremor from the ground during takeoffs and landings travels from the landing gear, struts directly to the vulnerable sections of the wing. This creates the perfect physical conditions for the accelerated growth of those hidden metal defects. Safety inspectors know the African savanna does not forgive technical weakness. The material fatigue, which had been accumulating in the spars for years, was now hit with a powerful destructive catalyst. What was once a microscopic, barely visible web of cracks inside the attachment points now spread rapidly through the metal. Every hard impact on the rocks invisibly weakened the aircraft's foundation. The harsh realities of local operations turned every flight into a test of its ultimate limits. Day after day, the turboprop liner stubbornly continued to perform its duty, stoically enduring the aggressive environment of South Sudan and the regular stress on its airframe. Two people are hopelessly late for boarding, and this twist of fate changes everything. The morning of January 29th, 2025, begins at the Unity oilfield with the usual hectic rush. The familiar turboprop is preparing to operate a regular charter flight straight to the capital of South Sudan, the city of Juba. The sun has barely risen, but the scorching air is already visibly shimmering above the stone-covered runway. A ground controller is focused, checking his paperwork. Today, the plane is exclusively serving employees of a major international oil consortium, the Greater Pioneer Operating Company. The eyes of a witness, a local drilling rig mechanic, pick out the tired but genuinely happy faces of his colleagues in the crowd. A grueling 28-day rotation shift in the harshest climate conditions is finally behind them. These people are finally going home to their families. The end of such a long tour of duty always means an incredible amount of accompanying luggage. Workers stream towards the small boarding stairs, carrying heavy duffel bags, tightly packed backpacks, and massive pieces of professional equipment. The baggage compartments fill up fast, with every cubic inch of free space used to the max. The weight of the cargo presses down relentlessly on the structure, visibly lowering the aircraft on its landing gear. An air accident investigator will later study every line of that morning's flight manifest with a magnifying glass. The dry, official document states with absolute clarity, exactly 19 passengers climbed the steps onto the aircraft. The narrow, pressurized cabin is completely full of people and tightly packed with the workers' personal belongings. The captain gives a quick glance at his watch and issues a firm command to close the doors. Left behind on the dusty ground are the two workers from the list, who simply couldn't make it to the checkpoint in time. They watch with deep disappointment as the roaring machine pulls away, wiping sweat from their foreheads. The engines powerfully spool up to operating speed, the propellers slicing through the dense African air with a loud roar. The airliner, overloaded with bags and technical gear, begins its confident taxi. Every passenger seat is occupied by an oil worker, anticipating a well-deserved rest. The pilots coolly complete the mandatory checks of the navigation systems before takeoff. Clearance from the control tower is officially received. The heavy aircraft slowly moves to its starting position and begins a rapid takeoff roll on the hard-packed earth, confidently setting off on its scheduled morning route. At the controls of this heavy machine are true legends of the African skies. The investigator, later reviewing the crew's personnel files, is astonished. The cockpit is occupied by two exceptionally high-caliber specialists. The aircraft commander is a renowned aviation veteran, Peter Amua. This man doesn't just fly planes, he teaches others how to do it. The captain holds the prestigious status of a flight examiner for the Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. His colleagues know him as an incredible perfectionist, always distinguished by his strict adherence to standard operating procedures. For him, aviation regulations are as immutable as the law of gravity. A pilot from a neighboring company recalls, "Flying with Amua means functioning like a perfect Swiss chronometer." And the second pilot, Emmanuel Viri Drake, is just that kind of mechanism. He holds the respected title of Senior First Officer. Drake is a unique blend of confidence multiplied by vast experience navigating over the scorched savanna. The turboprop's cockpit becomes an absolute citadel of professionalism. The second hand on the dashboard clock steadily counts off the time of a routine flight. The pilots exchange short, crisp commands over the intercom. Every hand movement is honed to complete automaticity. Their eyes constantly scan the complex array of gauges on the instrument panel. Journalists from industry publications often describe such tandems with sincere admiration. Two top-class pros at the controls are the most reliable shield between tired passengers and the unpredictable skies. Peter Amua gently but confidently adjusts the course. Emmanuel Drake meticulously monitors the stable performance of the turboprop engines. They understand each other without the slightest hesitation, like a seasoned conductor and the first-chair violin in a perfectly tuned orchestra. No unnecessary fuss, no random actions, just cold mathematical calculation, multiplied by iron composure and crystal-clear thinking. In these harsh logistical conditions, the presence of such a strong crew reduces any risk of piloting error to an absolute minimum. The notorious human factor has been reliably removed from the flight equation. The Future Commission, painstakingly reconstructing the sequence of events, will confirm a crucial detail. These professionals were flying the aircraft absolutely flawlessly, strictly following the letter of aviation law from the moment they began their climb. The hot African air is deceptive. It literally steals an aircraft's lift. The pilot's coordinated work inspires complete confidence, but nature is beginning to dictate its own harsh terms. The time is exactly 10:30 in the morning. A local meteorologist records a rapid heating of the atmosphere. The thermometer has already climbed past 32 degrees Celsius. The weather conditions are entirely visual, the sky perfectly clear. A light, variable wind barely rustles the dry grass next to the dirt runway. An investigator will later scrutinize every single line of the weather report from this scorching day. At first glance, the weather seems ideal for a safe flight. But this is where the physics sets a deadly trap. The high temperature drastically reduces a critical factor: air density. Oxygen molecules rapidly spread apart, turning the supportive cushion of air into a thin, rarefied void. The heavy multi-ton machine suddenly loses the dense support it relies on under its wings. An eyewitness on the ground notices with alarm. The sharp drop in air density is forcing the overloaded airliner to run along the ground for much longer than usual. The turboprop Beechcraft needs an enormous amount of runway to get airborne. The pilots, Peter and Emmanuel, are forced to push the engines to their absolute limit. Every extra second of the heavy takeoff roll on the uneven ground is like an unforgiving, invisible timer counting down to a critical point. A mechanic on the apron watches the plane with a long, knowing look, fully understanding just how difficult this takeoff is. To maintain the strict climb profile and guarantee clearance over obstacles, the experienced captain has to decisively increase the angle of attack. The nose of the plane pitches up sharply. In this tense moment, the basic laws of aerodynamics become a relentless, crushing force. A steep increase in the angle of attack during extreme heat multiplies the physical stress on the entire wing structure. The airflow slams against the metal, forcing the skin to strain to its absolute limit. Hidden deep inside, the wing spars absorb a colossal blow from the invisible, superheated element. The stress on the mounting points reaches incredible peak values. The experienced crew confidently guides the overloaded aircraft through the thick heat, while the scorching African atmosphere methodically tests every millimeter of the fatigued aviation alloy to its breaking point. The hands on the clock tick away the last few minutes of calm as the metal endures the searing sun. At exactly 10:25 in the morning, a deafening low roar echoes across the dusty Unity oilfield airstrip. The experienced flight crew performs a completely standard startup of both powerful engines. The turbines obediently and synchronously spool up to their operational speeds. The propeller blades instantly blur into a single, shimmering silver disc, powerfully churning the thick, almost tangible hot air. A ground crew mechanic on the apron carefully inspects the aircraft and gives the pilots a familiar thumbs up. Visual contact is confirmed. All onboard systems are functioning flawlessly. There isn't a single warning light on the complex instrument panel. At exactly 10:30, the decisive dynamic phase begins. The heavy, fully loaded machine smoothly taxis to its starting position and begins a rapid takeoff roll down the rough dirt strip. The course is set directly for the capital of South Sudan, the dusty city of Juba. Intense vibration from the uneven, rocky ground violently shakes the entire fuselage. Every passenger seat in the cabin vibrates in time with the harsh impacts on the landing gear. An Air Commission investigator will later meticulously note this crucial time frame in his notebook. The seconds of the heavy takeoff run become the final mechanical test for the wing's hidden components. The speed rapidly increases on the instruments. Captain Peter Amua pulls back on the yoke with a firm, confident hand. The multi-ton turboprop airliner obediently lifts off the rough African earth. Perfect aerodynamics have triumphed, successfully defeating gravity and the extreme morning heat. The crew immediately retracts the heavy landing gear into the wells. A loud click of the locking mechanisms echoes through the passenger cabin, and the external roar becomes noticeably quieter. Eyewitnesses on the ground let out a breath of sincere relief, their eyes following the silhouette as it rapidly climbs into the sky. The plane transitions into a completely normal climb phase. The tired workers relax in their seats, anticipating their swift return home. The altimeter steadily counts off the first few hundred feet. The engines are running perfectly smooth. The flight is proceeding exactly according to plan. The aircraft smoothly cuts through the heated air masses, leaving the harsh landscape of the oil field behind. The pilots calmly monitor their course, enjoying the excellent morning visibility. The illusion of safety shatters at an altitude of just a few hundred meters. The turboprop airliner is confidently slicing through the sky, when suddenly there is a deafening, unfamiliar crack. The witnesses on the ground, who had just been watching the plane with relief, freeze in a chilling stupor, refusing to believe their own eyes. A local worker drops his heavy tools onto the sand. Right before his eyes, an entire section of the right wing physically separates from the rapidly climbing aircraft. A huge piece of gleaming metal tumbles heavily through the air like useless foil, catching the bright morning sun. In that fatal moment, those same undetected microcracks complete their hidden, destructive work. An air crash investigator would later call this physical process the zipper effect, an instantaneous unzipping of the structure. The hidden metal fatigue, which had been quietly accumulating over years of constant vibration, reaches its absolute critical limit. Under the colossal pressure of the oncoming airflow, the one thing aviation engineers fear most happens: a catastrophic failure of the main structural spar. The solid alloy snaps with the terrifying sound of a giant string breaking. The structure that, just a moment ago, was confidently supporting many tons of weight simply ceases to exist as a solid, single unit. The main attachment points finally give way to the brutal force of merciless physics. Losing even a small fragment of a lifting surface is always a death sentence for an aircraft. Deprived of its crucial support in the dense ocean of air, the plane instantly loses its carefully calibrated balance. The multi-ton machine abruptly drops and immediately enters a violent, uncontrollable spin. From below, eyewitnesses see only the chaotic dance of the falling giant. A monstrous, insurmountable asymmetry of lift is created. One wing is still trying to bite into the air, while the severed side rapidly pulls the fuselage down. This uneven force acts like an invisible lever of devastating power. Inside the narrow, pressurized cabin, the world is turned upside down. Vicious centrifugal force pins people to their seats. The machine rapidly rotates around its longitudinal axis and, in a split second, flips completely onto its back in midair. The sky and the dusty ground violently switch places outside the small windows. The uncontrolled descent of the inverted aircraft rapidly brings the end, which has now become an absolute, unavoidable reality. 3 minutes and 15 seconds. That's the exact duration of this fatal flight. The hands of the control clocks freeze at the precise mark of 10, 33, and 15 seconds. It is in this relentless instant that the multi-ton, uncontrollable machine meets the hard, rocky ground with a deafening, terrifying crash. The local mechanic on the apron stares into the distance in a state of shock, unable to believe his eyes. The distance from the safe end of the life-saving dirt runway is a mere 500 meters. The airliner has crashed terrifyingly close to where it took off. The crew fought desperately until the very last fraction of a second, trying to level the aircraft, but the brutal laws of physics proved immeasurably stronger than human effort. The inverted fuselage slams into the scorched African savanna on its completely defenseless topside. The machine hits the hard ground in a fully inverted position, completely deprived of any shock absorption from the landing gear. The result is a colossal, high-energy impact of immense destructive power. Imagine a massive steel capsule slamming into a solid concrete wall at an impossible speed. The metal crumples instantly. The pressurized cabin, which just a few minutes ago was a comfortable shelter for tired workers heading home, is mercilessly deformed. The powerful kinetic impulse literally flattens the internal support structures, fatally compromising the integrity of the entire airframe. The severe destruction of the fuselage happens in fleeting fractions of a second, sending a thick cloud of red dust into the sky. The first rescue team to arrive at the crash site sees only a mangled, smoking wreck. The hot air is thick with the acrid smell of spilled jet fuel. An experienced commission investigator immediately begins his painstaking, difficult work by examining the scattered debris in detail. His sharp professional eye instantly notes a critical spatial anomaly at the scene. The main, flattened part of the fuselage lies deeply embedded in the ground right here. However, that same right wing that tore off earlier is in a completely different location, disturbingly far from the main impact site. The sheer distance of such a large component immediately becomes the key piece of physical evidence for the experts on the scene. This massive spread of heavy fragments provides mathematically perfect proof of a crucial fact. The aircraft's structural integrity was irreversibly compromised high up in the morning sky. Assembling this complex mechanical puzzle will give the specialists all the answers they need. 12 endless minutes of silence are broken by the wail of sirens over the scorched savannah. The clock reads exactly 10:45 as the first emergency crews break through the dust to the site of the crash. The investigator arrives on the scene, his gaze sweeping across the vast territory. The immense scatter of twisted fragments leaves no room for doubt. The aircraft started breaking apart long before it hit the ground, high up in the sky. Each piece of wreckage scattered across the ground tells the story, mapping out the terrifyingly clear trajectory of the disaster. The rescue squad commander, clad in protective gear, carefully makes his way toward the main fuselage. What he sees stops his seasoned heart cold. When the inverted aircraft slammed into the hard ground, it was like being crushed by a merciless giant press. The top of the once spacious fuselage was just gone, flattened right down to the level of the passenger seats. The metal skin had instantly buckled like an accordion, leaving almost no survivable space for the people inside. A tense race against time begins, with human lives hanging in the balance. A paramedic glances anxiously at his watch. Every second is critical in the suffocating heat. Through the deformed aviation aluminum and sharp torn sheets of fuselage, specialists work carefully, millimeter by millimeter, to pull 3 survivors from the heavy wreckage. Eyewitnesses watch in stunned silence. It's incomprehensible how these people are still breathing after such a devastating impact. They are immediately loaded into advanced life support ambulances and rushed to the nearest specialized hospital in Juba. Surgical teams on standby launch into their own difficult battle to save these fading lives. But the human body has its limits. 2 of the rescued were contract workers, heading home after a long tour of duty. Their injuries were just too extensive, too critical. Their bodies couldn't withstand the colossal G-forces of the crash, and soon, they closed their eyes for the last time in their hospital beds. The official commission's report is blunt and brutal. It confirms the final toll. The air tragedy ultimately claims the lives of 20 people, among them, both of the first-rate pilots. Captain Peter Amua and First Officer Emmanuel Drake had fought desperately to save the doomed aircraft until the very last second. 20 lives are cut short in a metal trap, but one person cheats fate. A rescuer is painstakingly clearing heavy piles of mangled aluminum when he suddenly hears a faint groan. Amidst the total chaos of hot metal and dust, he finds something truly unbelievable. There is only one survivor at the crash site, a staff engineer for an oil consortium named Macaire Emmanuel McCoy. For seasoned aviation experts, a person surviving inside an inverted and almost completely crushed fuselage is an exceptionally rare, almost fantastical phenomenon. Imagine a thin, fragile piece of glass somehow surviving, completely intact, under the heavy treads of a multi-ton tank. The rescue of an ordinary engineer from the epicenter of such immense kinetic energy seems like a genuine miracle. The commission's investigator carefully examines the rear of the downed plane and finds a perfectly logical, physical explanation. At the moment of that first horrific impact with the rock-hard ground, the entire tail section violently broke away. This massive component ripped away from the main body with a roar, instantly absorbing a colossal share of the destructive inertia. The rough geometry of the fracture created a tiny protective capsule among the flattened bulkheads. This formed what's known as a triangle of life, a small but surprisingly strong space where the metal refused to completely collapse. It was this unpredictable quirk of physics that preserved the vital space McCoy needed to live. The brutal deformation stopped just a few life-saving inches from his head. The medical team works with incredible speed, fully aware of the immense value of every minute gained. A doctor gently secures the injured man to a rigid stretcher, trying not to cause any more pain. Time is slipping away, and the hot African sun continues to relentlessly bake the still air over the savannah. Rescuers carry Makoi as carefully as they can through the dangerous maze of sharp debris toward the waiting medical transport. Local journalists tensely document every single detail of this incredibly complex emergency evacuation. The ambulance roars to life, kicking up a cloud of red dust as it speeds away, carrying the sole survivor to Juba's central hospital for intensive care. Doctors at the capital's hospital immediately connect the patient to life support systems. The medical staff is astonished by his phenomenal luck. The chances of survival here were effectively zero. The engineer begins his long road to recovery. When the groaning of twisted metal falls silent, the unforgiving, precise voice of science begins to speak. The dust over the hot savannah slowly settles, and aviation experts take the baton from the exhausted rescuers. The South Sudan Civil Aviation Authority immediately becomes the lead agency in this incredibly complex case. Local investigators meticulously collect charred and deformed parts, but they quickly run into an insurmountable technological barrier. The African nation simply doesn't have the sophisticated laboratories needed to decode the complex electronics. So, the flight recorders, found among the dry rocks, are urgently packed into secure, protective containers. These priceless sources of information are immediately sent on a special international flight directly to the United States of America for the most in-depth computer analysis. A Western journalist on the scene closely follows the evidence, knowing full well that the African soil holds only half of the bitter truth. The geography of this sprawling, tangled case begins to expand rapidly. On March 7, 2025, the painstaking work is officially joined by a special commission from halfway across the world in New Zealand. Specialists step into quiet, cool offices on the other side of the planet and begin a massive seizure of old maintenance archives, a colossal trove of aging paperwork spanning the long period from 2002 to 2016, now comes under the microscope of top engineers. With obsessive persistence, a stern analyst methodically flips through hundreds of yellowed pages of technical documentation. The official investigation's goal is crystal clear and utterly ruthless toward any past mistakes. The international team is hunting for hard, documentary evidence of the very first, barely perceptible development of micro cracks in this specific aircraft's long service history. The specialists are trying to calculate the exact critical moment when the fatigued aviation alloy first showed its fatal weakness. Every old inspection report, every sweeping signature from a duty mechanic, is now being scrupulously re-examined under immense public pressure. The engineers are trying to determine if the standard visual inspection system could have possibly missed the tiny, sinister web of fatigue cracking deep inside the lower spar caps of the wing. Scattered, dry archival data is now slowly but surely building a logical, yet bone-chilling chain of unseen degradation. Paper can hide anything, but tired metal never forgives a lie. Investigators dig deep into thick binders of mandatory airworthiness directives. These strict, dry regulatory documents are the primary law of survival in civil aviation. The experts must thoroughly and rigorously check the exact deadlines for every single technical mandate issued by the regulator. Any experienced independent aviation mechanic knows that a problem hidden deep inside the structure is categorically impossible to spot with the naked eye. This brings the entire, massive investigation down to one sharp, critical question. Was an actual eddy current inspection of the lower spar caps ever performed on this specific aircraft? This is not just a routine, quick look at the skin with a flashlight. It's a highly complex, high-tech procedure that requires incredible professional precision and a huge amount of man-hours. To truly get to the truth, technicians would need to use powerful, modern industrial X-rays or even perform a complete, time-consuming disassembly of the entire wing. The engineers act like experienced diagnosticians, seeing right through their patient. Massive scanners must examine the internal structure of the aluminum alloy, millimeter by millimeter, methodically searching for microscopic flaws invisible to the human eye. A local journalist, analyzing the harsh realities of regional transport, puts forward the most frightening hypothesis. Severe financial pressures often push small airlines to take desperate measures just to save money. The official investigation is now seriously considering the high risk that the maintenance was entirely fraudulent. In the aviation industry, there's a cynical term for this: a paper repair. All the right stamps are in all the right places. The signatures are there, the official logs look absolutely perfect, but the turboprop itself was never even touched by the expensive diagnostic equipment. With a heavy sigh, the investigator scrutinizes every inky signature of the duty inspector. If the costly and lengthy X-ray checks had only existed in neat reports for years, then this disaster was guaranteed long before the final takeoff. The experts methodically cross-reference flight schedules with maintenance logs, searching for the slightest inconsistency in the timeline. The investigative team is completing its painstaking documentation, piecing together the scattered facts into a single, cohesive picture to finally close the book on this heavy chapter of the official aviation investigation.